break, she attacked me in the hallway. She said, "Oh my goodness, they were actually listening to you. You had them in the palm of your hand, they were listening to you, they were listening to you." And then she looked at me as if to say, "And you're still black." What Deborah didn't realize is when I went through Johns Hopkins University for my MBA program, I had a professor named Dr. C. And Dr. C used to always say to us, "You're always too something to someone." You're always too something to someone. This has nothing to do with being black or white. This has to do with being too something to someone else. Right? You might be too black, you might be too white, you might be too big, too small, too Republican, too Democrat, too Redskins, too Patriots, too Patriots, too Patriots. So, yeah, I know where I am. So, but you're always too something. Matter of fact, raise your hand if you felt like you were too something before. Don't even be shy. Yell out what it was. Too what?
Short.
Too short. Where are you? Oh, over here. It's through your voice. Okay. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Too what? Yell it out. Don't be shy. Too what?
Pushy.
Too pushy.
Outspoken.
Too outspoken.
Queens,
Brown.
man.
Too what? Say it again.
Too brown.
Me too. Me too. Too brown. Too brown. What else?
Too pretty.
Too confident.
Too young.
Too young. I used to get that.
Too old.
What else?
Too old.
Too old?
Too much. Too much.
Too glittery. You got on a cape. What else?
Too much accent.
Too much of an accent?
Yeah.
All right. I was somewhere recently, a guy stood up and said, "Too handsome." Obviously too humble. But you know what it is for you. So one day I went to Dr. C. I said, "Dr. C, I get it. You're always too something to someone. What do I do about that?" He said, "Be too good for it to matter."
Oh.
Like that.
Be too good for it to matter. Lydia, nobody cares that I'm brown if I'm making them green.
That's right.
Be too good for it to matter. And then I usually parlay that story into, well, how do I become good? He said, "I'm going to mentor you." And then I talk about having a mentor in every major area of life. But let's look at the story itself. Where did humor come from? The dialogue and the faces and the spaces and the things in between the lines and the pauses and the,
Yeah.
you know, the bigger the stage, the more I lean back. Okay, so it's don't just think about your speech and your story in terms of what do I write down. I've never written them down. I got people sending me speeches and text, and it'll say something like, "This is where I'm going to smile." If you are truly, as Dale Carnegie said, under the influence of your own message, you're going to smile when you're supposed to. I never think about gestures. You're going to smile when you're supposed to. All right? So those are some things to think about when it comes to delivery. Speak to one, look to all, but make sure you take advantage of the spaces and faces in between the lines. And last thing about delivery is this: mimic correctly. We have people even nowadays saying things like this. The other day I was on the phone. What phone were you on the other day that looks like this? Next thing you know, you're going to be dialing. So what you do is this. If it was the other day, you go like this, you put your phone up, you take it off, there's your phone. Okay? Mimic correctly. I was coaching a guy, he was like, "The other day I was driving." I said, "Was it the space shuttle?" True story, I was in China, I was in Guangzhou, China, for the southern part, and there was a lady who I was helping with her speech, and this is exactly what she said. She said, "And I went to my daughter, and she's 4 years old, and I said, 'Honey.' I said, 'What's your daughter, Yao Ming? What's going on?" So, Carmelita is somebody I coached, and she said this. She said, "When I was young," and Darren LaCroix and I were coaching her. She said, "When I was young, my hobby was beating up boys. And I would take them by the ears. And I would twist their heads." And Darren said, "Were you fighting Shrek by the chance?" But it's important to understand how to mimic correctly. And it's also important to understand where you put everybody and every thing on your stage, because this is a scene up here. Matter of fact, point to my son. I want you to do it at the same time on a count of 3. On a count of 3, point to where my son was on the bunk bed. 1, 2, 3. You still see him. You still see him. Where's my vice president? You still see him. What's he look like? You still see him. So these are scenes that they're creating up there that people should never forget. I was working with one guy. He gave this wonderful story, and it was sad because his uncle passed away. And they had the funeral and the casket and everything right here. And then some other things happened in the story. And then later on in the story, they had lunch. I said, you were literally having lunch on your uncle. Remember where you placed everybody and everything.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. And the timeline too. Don't forget about the timeline. Raise your hand one more time if you have ever been a Toastmaster. Some Toastmasters don't like me. Because I joined in March of 1998. Got my CTM in March of 1999 and won the World Championship in August of 1999 in my very first try.
Yes.
Now, I can tell you're impressed, but can you feel the haters in the room? Okay, now stop right there. I'm not going to give you the rest of that story, but this is this. Listen. See the timeline? Joined March of 1998. Got my CTM March of 1999. Won the World Championship. The timeline in English-speaking countries goes from left to right.
Yes.
Now keep in mind, when you're up here, you need to do it backwards.
Yes.
You need to be like the... Yeah, like the Pilates instructor. You got to do everything backwards. Or the mirror. So, now what can I do at the end of my story? What does it allow me to do if I created the timeline?
Go back.
Go back. To go back to do a visual and verbal callback. I can easily say, but what if I had never joined Toastmasters? Where would I be today? And then it can become emotional. Imagine if you go back to the very spot where you and your son first had an argument. And then you go back at the end with a hug. I want to cry. Yeah. Okay. But now, here's one thing to remember. Everything you do story-wise in terms of delivery should be subtle. There are too many people who are taking some of my advice and just literally running with it. Because they'll do something like this. Fast forward 7 years. Yeah, so, like, no, that's not so. 7 years can be 2 steps, can be 1 step. It can be fast forward 7 years. Now you're at a new spot. Okay? So you have some ideas on how to craft, some ideas on how to deliver. Let's look really quickly at how to sell your message. Nod your head if you agree with me on this. When you're in speaking, you're in sales. Yeah. I said nod your head. Oh. I'll take a verbal though, I'll take a verbal. When you're in speaking, you're in sales, nod your head.
Yes.
What do you have to sell? Yourself, message, brand, them on taking the next step. The best speakers embrace it, the worst ones avoid it. And here's the sad part. You only have to master one formula. And this is it. Never sell a product, always sell what? Results. Never sell a service, always sell the results. If you're in leadership, never sell an idea, always sell the results. You sing along now. If you're in leadership, never sell change, always sell the results. If you're going for an interview, or maybe even to get hired as a speaker, never sell yourself. I got 15 years of experience. Nobody cares. Always sell the results. Case in point, decades ago, I went to buy my first car ever in life. And I went to the dealership. And the salesperson came up to me and he said, "Are you looking at that car?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Great. Let me tell you about it. This car has these types of brakes, this type of window, this type of motor." What you trying to sell? The car. I just said never sell a product, always sell the results. So I said, "Thank you, but no thank you, I'm not interested." I went to a different dealership, same day, different salesperson, same car. Now I gotta be honest, this guy must have anticipated where I was emotionally at that time of my life, you know, young and single and looking to mingle. Feel free to use that. So he walks up to me and says, "Are you looking at that car?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You're gonna look good in that one." He said, yeah, man, you'll be flying down the road, the wind's gonna be blowing through your hair, and the girls, let me tell you, the girls will be all over you. What do you think I did? I said, where was I? He made the sale not because he sold me the car, but he sold me what? The results. And he lied. I was lonely in that car. Just feeling my pain. So don't lie, but definitely don't sell the product, the service, the idea, change for yourself. Always sell results. A year from now, raise your hand if a year from now you'd like to be at least 3 times better than the speaker you are today. Good. And for absolutely free, for no fee, you can go to one of my websites, which is 52speakingtips.com. That's 52speakingtips.com. And every week for a year, you're going to get an audio lesson from me. And by the end of that year, you will be at least 3 times better than the speaker you are today. Now stop right there. What was the result? 3 times better. What was the resource? Which one did I mention first? Somebody said free. The results. So here's the addition to that formula. Never sell a product, always sell the result. Always put the result before the resource. Always state the result before the request. And that's the addition to that formula. And the last thing I'll say about selling your message is never ever close your speech with a Q&A.
Oh, yeah.
Never ever close your speech with a Q&A. Why?
Unexpected questions.
Exactly. You lose control. You can have a Q&A, but don't make it the last thing you do. Wrap up in your own way. Because can't some people ask some crazy questions?
Yeah.
The best 2-day management seminar I ever gave in my life, I ruined it at the end because I asked the wrong question. I asked, are there any questions? And a lady in the front row, I'll never forget, she looked up and said, I love the reinforcement techniques you gave us to reinforce the behaviors of our employees. I'm just wondering, do you think these same reinforcement techniques will work with my horses? And a guy in the back jumped up and said, nay! I was glad my son wasn't there. He was just like, how old are the horses? Have a Q&A, just don't end it. Does that make sense? All right, I'm going to give away a prize, and then I have to do an emergency landing because it's getting late. But before I give away the prize, I got to say this. If you had picked up my phone in the year 2000, you would have heard a woman from the Michigan Consolidated Gas Company say to me, Craig, we want you to come out here and speak, and for 45 minutes, we're going to pay you $3,500. That's the year 2000. I'm still a newbie speaker. So I was very excited, but what else do you think I was? I was scared to death. And to make things worse, they flew me out first class. Yeah. I get to the airport, they swept me up in a black limo. Took me out, wined and dined me. Drove me over to a 5-star hotel. Swept me up the next morning in that same black limo. Drove me over to the event. As I'm walking up on stage, the lady who convinced her higher-ups to hire me, to really go to bat for me, tucks into my jacket pocket a check of $3,500. I'm going out of my mind. And I looked that audience directly in the eyes, and I gave them a $150 speech. I failed. Miserably. It was so bad that by the time I stepped off that stage, the lady who convinced her higher-ups to hire me, the one that goes to bat for you, the one that goes to bat for you, she couldn't even look me in the eyes. I was absolutely devastated. Even the limo driver was looking at me like, man, I still got to take you back? That was the year 2000. Fast forward 19 years to today. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying it because you know where I came from. But my rehire rate today exceeds 90%. You know what that means? It means if you hire me once, chances are very good you're going to bring me back again, Susan. But that begs the question, what made the difference? What made the difference between me being on a company's wall of shame? They never want to see my face again. And you know what? They're not going to. You know why? Because They don't even exist anymore. I think I put them out of business. I was that bad. But what made the difference between that and companies calling me up today saying, Craig, we want you to come out here and speak for our annual convention again. We're willing to work around your schedule when you're free. I said, I'm not free, I'm available.
Yes, that's good.
But what do you think made the difference?
You drive.
I drive, okay. What else?
Practice.
Practice.
Your nerves, you were thrown off.
Nerves,
Yeah.
I'm definitely thrown off.
Your reputation.
Reputation, didn't want to let
Formula.
people down again.
You nailed down your formula.
The formulas. Yeah, and somebody said practice, which reminds me of my good friend Darren McCoy. Darren always says, stage time, stage time, stage time. One day I went to Darren, I said, Darren, what if you get a whole lot of stage time and you're practicing the wrong things? Couldn't you be, reinforcing negative habits? And sometimes those are very hard to undo. So I'll tell you exactly what made the difference. After my embarrassment in the year 2000, which you shouldn't have to go through, you won't if you listen closely, I rededicated myself to the art of public speaking.
Yes.
And I invested thousands upon thousands of dollars in coaching. My coach was charging me $4,000 per day. And I went through year after frustrating year just trying to figure out a process that works. I'm like, just give me a process that works some of the time. And I'm happy to say I got a process that works basically all the time. And I'm even happier because just a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, I was able to bottle up all these processes and put them into one system called the Craig Valentine Speak and Prosper Academy. Everything that made the difference between where I was then and where I am today is in that academy. Imagine what it can do for you. Now, like I said before, it's $797 because it has courses in there for how you can master humor, how you can master back-of-the-room sales so you can get even more engagements and make more money off the engagements you have, how you can master keynoting so you can go in and do 45 minutes and leave, right? How to master storytelling, all that's into this system. It's $797 or, here we go, it's the answer to one question. Whoever gets the answer to this question right first gets access to the Craig Valentine Speak and Prosper Academy for life. Here's the question.
Yes.
No. And the premise I'm making here is specifics stick. So it's a specific that I mentioned in one of my stories earlier, and if it sticks, then you should get it. The lady who walked up to me in the Chicago airport, what was she wearing? Got it. Right here. Give it to Kat. Give her a hand. $797. So you get access for the rest of your life. Everybody else has to make a one-time commitment. All right, I'll say this. There are more of them. $797, but because you brought me back for a second time in 6 years, and you treated me so kindly, I'm going to do you a favor, and I'm going to waive the shipping. Okay, so
It's all electronic.
oh look, it's $797, but I only have 6 handouts, 6 order forms, and I have brought them down to $497. Because once a year, I usually offer it at $497. Now raise your hand if you are in the academy. Okay. I do not want you to get upset with what I'm about to do. But for 6 people here, because I only have 6 order forms, I'm going to take it all the way down to $297. A one-time fee that you have access to the academy for the rest of your life. So come see me. Come see me afterwards. My Craig Valentine speaking process.
Oh, I'm not.
Okay. You're not mad because it's an abundant world, not a scarcity. All right. So here's what I want you to do. We only have about 2 minutes, so has it been helpful?
Yes.
All right. I say this usually throughout my entire presentation. I'll say turn to your neighbor and discuss one idea you got from this, one idea you got from this section, one idea you got from that section. But because we're almost running late, which we're not yet, just study your notes.
Quick question about
Yes.
foundational phrase. I have a keynote I recently developed. Should I wait till the end to give my phrase, or can I start at the beginning and give it a few times?
Well, it depends what makes them more curious. If you have a phrase at the beginning that you say, something like I used to with one of my speeches, nobody's ever died from a snake bite. People get into it because they're curious. But most of my speeches, Oscar, the phrase comes out somewhere in the middle, in the cure scene, and and then I'll hand it to you out the door. So it's uncovered. Okay? So, yes.
No.
I guess we're in Q&A.
Craig, as a student of yours,
Yes,
and I highly recommend your products.
Thank you.
You do a great job. I get confused with the bang and the foundational phrase.
All right, so the bang is for keynotes, and that's basically the first thing you say in a keynote. You want to open with a bang. You want to take advantage of the first 7 seconds, first 30 seconds. So my bang used to be this. Clap like, this is for my corporate audiences. Clap like I was just introduced. When I was in prison, visiting. And then I go off from there. And in 5 words I have them. That's the bang. What you might be confused with is the big promise. The big promise is a big promise they're going to get by the time they leave here today. So like today, my big promise was, you're going to be able to keep your audience on the edge of their seats and make them glad they came.
Thank you. Oh,
Okay, but the bang and your 5 C's, the curiosity is the first one. How can you do a bang and a C?
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. No, the bang is for the very beginning of a keynote.
Keynote, okay.
The curiosity is for the beginning of the story.
Story, okay, thank you.
All right, so let me do this. I'm going to close up, and then I will be around. I'll be around. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. But I just want to end like this. Because sometimes you might look at me and think, well, of course these strategies work for you, because when it comes to speaking, you're a natural. And nothing can be further from the truth. Nothing can be further from the truth. I'm the least likely person in this entire room to be the world champion of public speaking. I promise you that. I'm the least likely person in this entire room to be a speaker of any kind. Because when I was 10 years old, something very disturbing happened to me for a 10-year-old. I was walking in the Columbia Mall where I lived. I mean, I didn't live in the mall. You understand what I'm saying? And I ran into a father of one of my friends. I'm going to refer to him as Mr. H. And Mr. H came walking up to me. I'm 10 years old by myself, and he said, "Hey, little Craigie, how you doing?" And I told him. He said, "What's going on in your life?" And I told him. But he kept looking at me really strange. And then finally, he looked down at me and told me that I had a lisp. You know what a lisp is? Speech impediment. Here are his exact words. "Craigie, don't talk anymore, because every time you open your mouth, you remind me of Daffy Duck." What does that do to a 10-year-old kid? My confidence, my esteem, everything plummeted. And for the next 4 or 5 years, you couldn't get a word out of me. The popular motivational speaker Les Brown says, when you open your mouth, you tell the world who you are. And I didn't want people making fun of me. Well, finally, after about 4 or 5 years, when I forced myself to face reality, and I now started going through what I now call my 4 R's to remarkable results, I can stand before you today as the 1999 world champion of public speaking, and that's not even the best part. Here's the best part, and I promise you this. The same people who kicked you when you were down will pat you on your back as you move forward, because you persevered, and you're remarkable. And the case in point is October 1999, 2 months after I won the world championship. I'm in the parking lot of the Supreme Sports Club in Columbia, Maryland, where I go work out, as you can tell. And I overheard a familiar raspy voice coming towards me. And I couldn't believe that 18 years after our incident in the mall, I was coming face to face with an older Mr. H. My heart's pounding because he still had that hold on me, you know? And he came walking up to me and he looked at me with the same strange eyes and he said, "Hey Craig, how you doing?" I said, "I'm fine, Mr. H, and how are you?" As clearly as I could. He said, "I read your articles. I saw you in the newspaper. Man, that is wonderful what you've been able to accomplish." He said, "But Craig, that one article, I can't believe that at the tender age of 10, some man would have the nerve to call you Daffy Duck." I said, "Mr. H, I don't quite know how to tell you this." "But it was you!" He said, "It was me." I said, "Yeah, you don't remember?" He said, "No, Craig, but I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." You ever have 18 years of anger? All that stuff started to rise up. But I couldn't cry, but I couldn't hold back my mouth. And I said, "Mr. H, you son of..." I said, "Mr. H, don't apologize. I would not be the man. I would not be the speaker. I would not be the world champion I am today if you hadn't stopped and confronted me and made me face reality." as far as you not even remembering what you did to me, I think that's despicable. Thank you.